Bankers, lenders of Reddit, what is the most bizarre loan you have seen people apply for?
I work in 401k administration. You can take a loan out under 401k depending on how the plan is set up. One of the provisions for many plans is that you can take a $5,000 loan if you have a baby or adopt. Someone called in asking to take a loan because their friend had a baby. What? No, we won't give you $5,000 whenever someone you know has a child.
My aunt's old ex-boyfriend was a banker. Always told us about how someone wanted a loan for a small business that was a BBQ joint with strippers, but the strippers are eating BBQ and people are watching and throwing money.
I worked as a bank teller in college. My branch had a guy try to take out a $60,000 personal loan to help his girlfriend in Russia pay off border control so she could finally come join him in the US after a 2-year exclusively text-based relationship. No matter what we said, he remained firmly convinced that she existed and was in love with him and that the $30,000 he'd already sent her was money well spent. We didn't give him the loan. He closed his accounts on the spot, taking the entire less than $1,000 he had left with him.
I used to practice the art of personal loans. Someone wanted $10,000 to buy a ranch in Tennessee, and we were in LA, so I asked him how he planned to buy a ranch in Tennessee with only $10,000. He then ran away without a word. To this day I still wonder what he really would have done with the $10K if I had given it to him.
My banker told me a story of a rapper who asked for a loan to make his music video, where he produced an itemized list of the various items he'd be renting, including 2 kilos of cocaine. He is usually not one for telling tall tales, but this just borders the line between believable and not for me. Most surprising thing is the guy was planning on renting cocaine.
One of my coworkers had a customer get approved for a business credit card and he quickly used that to spend $10K on breast enhancement for his wife. When we asked him how this could even be considered a business expense, he told us, well, she's in sales.
Don't know if it counts, but my fiancé is a banker and had an unemployed, retired I think, guy legitimately not understand why he couldn't use his credit card limit as income to get approved for a mortgage.
So we had a guy come in wanting a car loan for a used diesel truck. The truck was $15K. Unfortunately the truck had high mileage and his credit wasn't the greatest and we could only approve him for $6K and 15% interest. It was not a good loan and I told the customer as much. I advised finding a lower mileage, newer vehicle and waiting 6 months to repair minor credit issues in order to get a lower interest rate. He insisted on getting that truck right that very moment. He proceeded to tap into his retirement funds. Probably paid some insane penalties and taxes, paid the $9K down payment and signed the paperwork for the loan. 3 months later he sold the truck at a loss.
A woman called asking for a personal loan to pay the negative balance in her account that she owed us.
We had a guy who needed just a little more money to catch the Sasquatch. He had a guy that was willing to pay him billions of dollars once he caught it. It sounds like a joke, but the guy was dead serious.
Gentleman came into my small local credit union to apply for a car loan. Great, what kind of car is it? A Jeep. Awesome. What's the exact model? It's custom. Well, what year is it? 1989. Oh, a little on the older side. And the mileage? Not sure, the guy I'm buying it from is in different state. Oh, I'm sorry sir, it would have to be registered in state. Oh. Well, do you know how to register a monster truck with a DMV? Excuse me? Yeah, the Jeep's been converted to a monster truck. I'm not just gonna drive it around. Oh. I'm so sorry, we won't be able to finance your out of state, vintage, monster truck. Years ago, a friend of mine that works as a loan officer had to explain to a guy that he couldn't get an additional loan to cover the down payment on that mortgage. The guy didn't have a job, but he kept insisting that he would be starting some unspecified job in 3 months. He didn't know how much it paid.
Saddest one I ever got was a 88-year-old woman who applied for a $100 loan to get a window AC unit for her trailer. She didn't have a computer to apply online and wasn't able to drive, so his daughter drove her to the branch. The temps were getting up to 104 that summer and it was dangerous for her to be inside. The unit was $60 but she was too frail to pick it up and needed the extra $40 to get it installed. We couldn't approve her and I was a little upset about the daughter. She couldn't save $40 for 2 months to help out her mom.
Not a banker, but I heard a coworker at a previous job complaining to someone that his loan application for his cigarette company was denied. His logic was that he enjoyed rolling his own smokes, so why not start a business selling hand-rolled cigs? He legit thought he would make millions doing it.
I used to work in a department of Wells Fargo that specialized in the weird. All the loans no other department would touch. It started as a way to keep business customers with lots of money happy. Like a courtesy loan knowing that we would make money from them elsewhere. One of the most iconic loans, that we used as an example to explain to other departments what we did, was a loan where a farmer put up a barn as collateral to get a loan to buy his wife's dentures.
Not too crazy, but an airplane. Not just a single prop Cessna or anything like that, but this plane could seat like 8-10 people and had climate control and everything. My head underwriter didn't want me to use the plane itself as collateral, as he could just take off with it and end up anywhere on the planet. After explaining that was pretty much true with a car, boat loan too, she acquiesced. I'm not going to tell you for privacy's sake how much it was, but let's say that I could have not sold another loan for about 6 months and still exceeded all of my goals. Not a banker, but something I saw in an article a year or two ago, about most unusual loan reasons in my city. The ones that I still remember were to buy a Maine Coon cat, $2,000 at that time, I think, historical books and arranging a marriage for an ex-wife.
I make agriculture loans exclusively. No other loans except to farmers and ranchers. Borrower's wife comes in mid-40s, asks to borrow $10,000 but doesn't want husband to know. I ask the purpose, she beats around, then finally tells me she needs the money for breast enhancements. I tell her I can only make loans that enhance the farm, then she gives me this big spiel about how it would increase her husband's morale, thus a better farm. Still hard no. Somehow she gets the procedure. 2 years later she has nice breasts, a new husband, and together they own half of a cotton farm. I still bank the first husband.
Not a banker, of course. I handled a fraud case where the lady took out a $6,000 personal loan in cash, I think that was the amount. This was several years ago, to send to who she thought was an 80s-era country singer who claimed to be in financial trouble. She stuck the cash in an envelope and mailed it to another state. She also sent several $1,000s worth of iTunes gift cards through the mail to him because somehow that would help him pay his bills or something. Altogether I think it was close to $20,000 she sent.
Not a banker or lender, however my college roommate last year was always spending insane amounts of money on stuff. 1 week a new TV and PS4, the next a car, and the next some other overly priced unneeded thing. It was insane. I asked him where'd he get all his money. He said it was from his loans. I assumed maybe it was a bit extra that he got in a school refund when you overpay your school bill with your loans/grants/scholarships, etc. Albeit a bit more than I would expect. Nope. Literally took out loan to buy this stuff. I had to explain to him that you have to pay it back. It's not just free money. That was a real punch in the balls for him.
I work in tech, specifically in the mortgage industry. The funniest thing I saw was a closing disclosure, the document you get before your loan that covers all your payoffs among other things, for someone who was paying off a ton of debt from a variety of sources by refinancing their home. They had a Section K, which is basically third-party payoffs, that was literally longer than our document form could handle. Normally this section can handle 10-11 payoffs, and it's rare for us to see more than 2 or 3. This person had close to 40, which is just insane. It took our tech team 3 days to get a new template that would work, get it approved, and fix the software so it could be handled.
I'll have to say that all of this is pretty tame compared to the ass end of commercial leasing industry where desperate people lease stupid shit at 35% interest. Pro tip: if the best leasing rate you can qualify for is 35%, your business has already failed and you are in denial.
I have a friend who's a farmer and beekeeper. He lost 60% of his hives to CCD, so he was forced to go to his banker and ask for a $1 million loan to buy replacement bees. A bee dies in 30 days? He made it work, and is still in business. But the thought of that debt obligation makes me pucker every time I think about it. $1 million loan ... for insects with a 30-day lifespan.
Former client-facing banker, I finally have stuff to contribute to an ass credit. I have a couple weird ones. 1. Not a new loan, credit issuance, but I once was reviewing my book and noticed that client's HELOC was nearing the end of its draw period. I did a little digging hoping to make some cash on a refinance and noticed that well over $20,000 had been drawn in the last 12 months and unusually small transaction amounts, under $20. Turns out Candy Crush can just freaking wreck your finances. 2. I once had an older client, 75 plus, come in looking to apply for a business loan to help develop a video game. Being a closeted nerd, naturally I asked what kind of game. And there I heard the most scattered video game concepts in the world. Apparently it was inspired by Ready Player One, but honestly it just sounded like Second Life. I mentioned that and I then proceeded to have to listen to an old man talk about the weird sex stuff he experiences playing Second Life. I'm pretty sure I blacked out for a few seconds in my office from the awkwardness. I was a mortgage loan officer in the refi boom after 9/11. I was doing mainly $130,000 or so refi, or cash-out loans. VP for an investment bank called in offer a direct mail piece. $900,000 house. Wanted a lower rate on a 30-year note. Made about $750,000 a year. Pull his credit ... almost $500,000 in credit card debt. He claimed to be borrowing money at near 0% and investing it in short-term CDs for about a 1% spread just for the fun of it. Couldn't qualify with the loans, wouldn't pay them off and stop playing the game, and the house didn't appraise high enough to roll closing costs in. Nice guy. I believe he was spending the money obviously on something else and it was long gone. He couldn't admit this to guys at work, so he called us. I worked it for months. Had a new idea and he emailed me and said he got it done elsewhere and to not contact him anymore.
We used to offer a home equity line of credit with the marketing along the lines of it's like turning your house into a savings account. It even came with a Visa card. At a monthly adjustable variable rate tied to the prime rate. People applied for it like mad, and that is the most bizarre loan I have ever seen people apply for. I'm pretty confident they all lost their houses in the housing implosion a few years later. Home equity is a useful tool. But you know people were going on vacations and buying groceries with that fucking Visa card.
This thread has convinced me to walk into my bank and ask them for a loan to start up my shrimp breeding and selling business just to see the reaction. I have collateral in the form of owned property and a fairly high credit rating, so I'd like to see the battle between how absurd the idea seems versus the fact that it might be a valid loan to provide to an eligible person. All you tellers watch out. I could be the next weirdo sitting at your desk. I am not a banker, but a customer who received loan offers. I find it bizarre that people take loans to go on vacation. Unless one of the travelers is dying or will never be able to travel in the future, borrowing money to go on vacation baffles me.
In 2007, my buddy who had been a bartender, was hired by a regular at his bar to become a mortgage underwriter. One of his first customers was a guy who made $1,800 per month applying for a loan that had a monthly payment of $3,600 per month to start, but it was an ARM, and it was slated to increase to $5,400 per month after 3 years. And this loan was to buy a boat, not a house. The guy who hired my buddy came in and told my buddy to underwrite the loan. And that's the story of how my buddy quit his new job before his first shift even ended.
Not me, but my dad worked for Citi Financial way back. He told me how this guy took out a loan to buy a ring for his girlfriend of several months, bought her car, and to give her what was left over to help her out with her kids. That same guy came back a week later to cancel it because she took off with the car, money, and ring and ditched him and her kids.
Washington Mutual gave a home loan to a guy whose proof of income was a photo of him wearing a mariachi outfit. https://www.newyorktimes.com/2008/business/28wamu.html. A guy wanted $200 for concert tickets. His credit score was 420. He did not get a loan.
This guy came in asking for a loan to get his dope growing business up and running. When I denied him, he shouted to everyone in the bank that I sexually assaulted him at a party.
$40,000 HELOC so his son could buy crypto mining equipment.
When confronted about how a deadbeat guy was a pill popper and degenerate gambler, was going to make good on interest, he said he was about to win the lawsuit of a lifetime. Who was he suing? Little League. Why? Because he got hit with a foul ball and he was hurt. When his two most valuable assets were a Ford Ranger with 100,000 miles and a 15-year-old big-screen TV, he was told to pound sand.
I once had a client apply for a loan for porn supplies. I was the unfortunate one who had to tell him that we would not be giving him the $150,000 loan.
My husband works in a bank and he says it's ridiculous how much people borrow for their weddings. I don't get it. Why do you need a lavish ceremony when you obviously can't afford it? I know they do it to impress others, but still.
I want £10,000 but I'll pay it back in a week. You see, some guys are currently driving round London in a armored truck full of my gold and I have to pay them £10,000 for bringing it to me. My long-lost uncle built up a fortune in Africa and recently passed. This is my inheritance. When asked if he had ever met his African relatives, the answer was no. When asked if he'd ever heard of them before they rang to tell him about this truck full of gold, the answer was no. So apparently the courier had loaded the truck and sent it on its way before they had even contacted him to tell him about it, and they were aimlessly driving round and round London waiting on their feet. Didn't matter how many times I told him he was being scammed, he didn't believe me. He was 19 with less than £100 in his account and no job. Needless to say, we did not approve the loan. He called me a bitch and said he'd have my job. I stayed there another 4 years before I left to have a baby, so clearly didn't manage to make much of that threat.
My name has finally paid off. I've seen everything from sad moments of parents begging for a loan to bury their child. An 18-year-old wanting nudes, cancer treatments, leaving their abusive spouse, their fifth TV when they can afford it. You learned a lot about people and what's important to them when you're underwriting credit. It's a tough job to decline the emotional one. I see in the comments below all the romance scams. They're common. If you're looking for bizarre, ask the commercial, small business loans groups. The ones that support the sex trade. That's where it gets freaky deaky. Someone looking to refinance their student loan debt because you can't include student debt in bankruptcy.
This one was only bizarre because it was bizarrely stupid. A guy wanted to borrow /20k to buy Bitcoin. I had to talk to a manager afterwards to make sure they knew that it was reasonable for me to decline it based on the no loans for investments rule.
I'm in the back office for reporting bad loans to our stakeholders. We acquired a bank that gave a farmer $5 mil and only had his cows as collateral. He stopped paying the loan, we went to go pick up the cows and they were mysteriously gone. Board of directors weren't happy, but very obvious why the bank we bought was going under. Say insane collateral stories from junk banks we've bought in the past. Just because they lend, doesn't mean they're good for it.
Not a banker, but was friends with one in high school. He told me there was this pissed off old lady who wanted to borrow $1 million to buy out her doctor's office and bulldoze it because he or she told her she was overweight.
I am a loan officer, so this is literally my thing. 1. Guy applied for a plane just to go back and forth to Costa Rica. Dude had the cash for it. We couldn't finance those since we don't do that kind of collateral. 2. Applying for like a 5th or 6th car. Somewhat common to find parents, Normally elderly ones with several cars on their credit queues, they co-sign for the whole family. FYI, this skyrockets your debt ratio since you're still liable for the loan. 3. One guy wanted to buy an 18-wheeler that was converted into an RV. Thought that was neat. 4. 30K plus motorcycles usually blow me away since it is essentially a toy. 5. To get a loan to pay their other loans they are behind with us. 6. Sad ones are when we catch children committing elderly abuse by making their elderly parents buy them cars. Unfortunately had to call the elderly abuse hotline more than once. Probably more, but those are off the top of my head.
I had a client who once came in for a personal loan. They were looking for about 20K to pay off and close multiple credit cards and use the rest for a vacation. After it was approved and the funds advanced to their account, they used the money, and surprise, it wasn't for the credit cards. The client came back 2 months later looking for another loan and was surprised when I let them know that they were being declined because they failed to meet the conditions previously set. Pay and close off 2 credit cards. The client was furious that they were not approved and called everyone in my branch a scammer for not loaning our more money.
We had an application from somebody once who wanted to borrow from us so he could pay administrators to help him file bankruptcy. He didn't think we would see through his clever plan there to screw us out of money. We also often have people apply for loans for debt consolidation of a single debt when they have quite a few other debts which are in arrears. When we query the single debt, it's the only one with a guarantor. So effectively they want us to lend them money to remove the security on that one debt so that they can then treat us like the rest of their creditors, or apply for an insolvency action to try and help them reset their credit. I'm just gonna add in here, it's not crazy or anything, but I think you may need to know. A home equity loan is normally used for house improvements. The clients have to go through a bidding process, appraisal, after a certain amount. We have had countless clients try to apply because they were rebuilding their house and ran out of money. Straight up, the appraiser told us that the house was framework. TLDR, get a HELOC before you start any work on your house, just in case. Also, I feel like bankers get a bad rap for being salesmen. I personally just want to help my clients create a better, easier life for themselves, as do many others. Most will tell the client if they're getting the raw deal of an elephant stick, as noted in the comment above.
You were asking SoftBank for several $1 billion when their business model was already found to be a failure.
I had turned down someone for a small business loan last year which was completely legitimate. It was for a zipline pulley system to transport snacks from the kitchen to your desk or the reception area.
Many years ago I had an elderly couple call in. They had plenty of money in savings already. They wanted to borrow £25,000, our upper limit at the time. They wanted it for a once-in-a-lifetime holiday. Fair enough, they could afford the repayments with their pensions etc. all good. They then proceeded to ask for loan insurance. This was before the PIS scandal here in the UK. I explained the extra cost and the pros and cons. They were adamant they wanted it and then explained that Mr. had cancer and had been given 6-12 months to live. They had done their research and knew our policy on loan protection would pay out when he died, ultimately meaning they would get the loan paid off. I spoke to my line manager to check and the loan was agreed and processed. I was sad for them, but also I was amazed at how calm the couple were about it all.
Guy came into the bank bragging about how many properties he owned, how much he made, nice house etc. Dude also had a bunch of cats. Applied for a $250K loan to buy an island in the Caribbean for the cats to live freely on and himself to retire. Was mad when he got denied.
I used to process subprime loans back in the late 90s. Had a borrower one time who was doing a debt consolidation loan with the equity they had in their house, and was getting cash out. The underwriter asked for a letter of explanation, basically, what are you planning to do with all this money? Around $15,000, I think. Borrower wrote back that they planned to buy a new yellow Ford Ranger XLT, and attached a PO from their dealer. The loan rate was north of 10% for 30 years. And they got their cash out refee.
I work at a bank, not a loan scenario but funny as hell. This African dude wearing a dashiki comes into the branch and sits with a female co-worker of mine. Super loud talker, his conversational tone was borderline yelling. He tells my co-worker that he wants to file a fraud claim, so she connects him with the fraud department over the phone at her desk. This guy's fraud claim was he got a hooker yesterday and owed her $100 but he didn't have cash handy and was too tired, lazy to hit the ATM. His solution was to give her his debit card and PIN and have her go to the ATM. Surprisingly, she never came back and withdrew $300 instead of the agreed upon $100. He wanted to file a claim for the $200 difference.
Not a banker, but I set up auto loans for customers when I worked at a dealership. And I had one lady who seemed fairly normal and cogent get nearly all the way through the process when she informed me, us that God was arranging for how she would pay for the car.
Overheard on my first week in the job. No, I'm sorry sir, we can't consider a business loan for a jet ski. Because you operate a haulage business, that's why.
I used to work at a bank assessing claims for hardship. One customer accumulated $15,000 credit card debt playing Farmville. This was about 8 years ago. Another, who had just turned 18 and gotten a credit card, accumulated $5,000 debt in 1 month with purchases from the Games Warehouse and Domino's. Another middle-aged gentleman maxed out 2x $75,000 credit cards, $150,000 total, on an internet dating service. His transaction history showed that it was spent on webcam girls. Used to work for a well-known UK high street telephone banking department a good 10 years ago or so. Had one guy call in looking to get a personal loan for the maximum amount we could lend. He didn't have the facility for us to lend him that amount of credit. Cue an hour-long phone conversation about how he needed the money because he had discovered a way to turn water into fuel for cars and need the money to complete his invention. Apparently the reason, according to him, I couldn't offer him a loan was because I was on the payroll for large multinational oil companies who were trying to prevent his invention from ever coming to fruition. Who knew I'd ever get to tell this one here, although it'll get very deep. A guy requested a loan for $129 million to build a luxury hotel he'd designed himself, created all the 3D images and everything. He had made a business plan that showed ridiculous profits in the first year after opening. They were as ludicrously unrealistic as you can imagine. He was very upset that we rejected him and said that the bank was never going to fund it. Had to say never because he was very insistent in us taking this higher up in the bank. Later I was told that he used to be a university professor in our country but then had some kind of a breakdown and was living with his mom. He was in his 40s. He was coming for the third time with a ridiculous planning. He seemed to be on the hunt for the one true money maker. Hard not to feel sorry for the guy.
There's a pretty great webisode of The Office where Kevin tries to get a bank loan for an ice cream shop so he can take the money and pay off his gambling debts. Here is it for those that haven't seen it. https://t.b/j1lvfxx9us. There was another weird fella, young man, who wanted to buy some mall ninja shit that cost about $500. He applied for a credit card and surprisingly he was approved, but it only had about $300 starting credit. He said it wasn't enough and then closed it. He came back a week later to try for a different card. I told him it would be impossible since he just opened and closed a credit card and it would make his credit worse. He insisted on doing it, so I did. Twice in a span of 2 weeks. Rejected both times. The last time I saw him I told him I wouldn't do it and he would have to find another bank since it was a waste of time for me and it kept ruining his credit score. We desperately need a financial education class in high school.
Here is the footage. It has to be seen to be believed. https://to.b/jf35xhaxco.
Former mortgage loan officer here. Borrower wanted to refinance his house and pull out $50K to pay off his mistress. Fell through when he realized his wife is also on the title and would have to sign off on it too.
I had a man apply for an auto loan and when I pulled his credit, I asked where the Ford on his credit was. He promptly told me he dropped it off at the Ford dealership across the road and let them repo it about 5 minutes ago and now wants something else. He even pointed it out through the window. Figured he could get a second loan before the banks see he repoed it.
Romance scams everywhere. Don't wire money or take out a loan to pay for your fiancé that you've never even met in person.
I had a customer ask for a $25,000 loan which he wanted to then invest with the bank in our managed funds, so that he could then use the profits as a house deposit. He could not seem to understand that because the interest rate on the loan was, like, 10% PA more than the interest earned on the managed funds, he would be losing money.
Mortgage loan officer here. Someone who wanted to finance everything. So including notary fees and the file cost of the credit. He had €300 on his account and it was only the 15th of the month. File cost equals €500. It's not that weird of a question, I mean I've had worse. But, he kept on insisting I should give him the money and that I'm unreasonable to ask for €500 file cost. I should just drop them. That way, the credit could be approved according to him. He was sure another bank would approve and he would change banks with everything he had. He's still a customer of ours after 2 years, guess it didn't work out. Dumbest question I've had, can you put me through with Steve from Bank Z? Keeping in mind I work for Bank X, I say to the customer she has to phone that bank then. Her reply, you work at a bank, right? So, just put me through with Steve who also rocks for a bank. There's many more stories, but this post would just become too long.
Not alone but. My brother had a part-time job in the bank when he was studying. An old woman walked in one day and wanted to send €4,000 to her boyfriend in Nigeria. His name was James, Jack or something like that. He worked for FBI in Nigeria and was her boyfriend. My brother obviously asked her if they knew each other and she said yes. She had sent money to him in the past and she pulled an email out that said something like, "Hey honning." Directly Google Translate from "Hey honey." Honning is the Danish word for honey, not like your girlfriend but like the thing you eat. He asked his boss what he should do, because he knew it's a scam and he told him that he had to send it to the scammer. It's her money.
A pizza loan. This woman named Barb Kellner came into my office one day with a box of pizza. She wanted a small business loan for her pizza business. So I'm thinking she wants to open a pizza place, alright. No. She wants to operate a pizza eating business. She said people call her all the time when they have leftover pizza and he will come over and eat it. She wanted to get a van with a picture of her sitting in a lawn chair eating pizza painted on the side of it. She kept on handing me pens and asking me to make out a check to Barb Kellner. Anyway, I denied her and I've got no clue what she is doing now.
I'm a mortgage banker and I work in a call center. All loan applications are done over the phone. One day, I had this lady who was probably mid-60s with an extremely raspy, smoker-sounding voice. She proceeded to tell me how hot she was and needed to have sex since she was no longer attracted to her much older husband. Needless to say, it was awkward as hell and I tried to get her off the phone as soon as possible. Many other times, I have had a spouse trying to get a cash-out refinance without the other knowing.
My company is financing a loan for a giant trampoline in Kansas.
Maybe not bizarre, but pointless, even though it was good on him for trying. One that stood out was a single man in his 30s with no job and using Social Security benefits and disability income to qualify. In total his monthly income was less than $2,000. Something like 1.7K. I thought that was odd, so I looked at the numbers the LA proposed for his loan. The mortgage plus interest, taxes would take up more than 50% of his fixed income on this home he wanted to buy in Wisconsin. He was getting down payment assistance. However, I questioned why he was doing this when he clearly wouldn't have enough expendable income to live and buy daily necessities or save for emergencies. I'm not sure if he was ever fully approved.
Partner used to be a lending officer. He told me a pimp phoned the bank and asked if they could get a loan to open a brothel. The bank declined based on the loan purpose because of the bank's community values. He told me lending for strip clubs was somehow fine, though.
I have done a loan for a corgi. It was a personal loan, less than 1K. I let them know if they didn't make their payments I was coming for that dog, lol.
I remember a customer ringing up, wanting a credit card limit of 20K, so he could do a cash advance to purchase Bitcoin at its peak. Cash advances charged at 22.95% PA.
My wife is a banker and had a woman come in looking for about $150,000 to build an app that will change the world. After giving evasive answers onto what kind of app it would be, she finally says no, the money is to learn how to make an app that would change the world.
About 20 years ago, one of my customers in South Africa invented a way to can bananas, without them turning pink and becoming like rubber. We declined his loan to put up the banana cannery, as we did not see sufficient demand.
Not me, but a colleague who opened business accounts at the time. She had someone come in dead chuffed with himself because he had just had his first successful crop sale after a year or so of hard work when he'd had no horticultural experience before. He wanted £25,000 to increase production. The crop was weed, if you hadn't already guessed. He was definitely growing illegally, and I'm sorry to say he was declined at the time.
Worked at a subprime auto finance bank. All car dealers are fucked. 39.99% interest on sub-15K vehicles plus negative equity equals head-rolling loans. Financially illiterate people that didn't know what they were signing. Completely predatory lending practices. That kind of stuff on a daily, hourly, minutely basis.
I guess you can call it bizarre. Used to work in the bank a long time ago in a suburb in Perth that's not exactly high class. Had 2 appointments booked for personal loan applications. First one wanted a car loan. 6 kids, all to different father, doesn't work, and when asked how she is going to pay for the loan. I'll just get pregnant again and pay it with my baby bonus. Declined. Didn't think it will get worse. Second one. Wants unsecured to get the TV, PS and clothes. 8 kids. Different father as well. When asked how she will pay for it. Friend is going to get me into escorting. Guys can't get enough of me, I'm going to make a lot of money with my booty. Declined. Then you had a couple who wanted to get a joint loan to get a breastwork done on the GF. When I told him I might not be able to get an approval for a joint loan as the bank doesn't see him getting benefit from the loan, he looked at me and dude, my GF is getting breast enlargement. You think I'm not getting benefit? Funny enough, declined due to bad credit rating. Lol.
Upvote for being an original and good question. We had a homeless guy try to take out a home equity line of credit using a street corner as collateral. Also had someone apply for a loan to buy Mount Rainier. Dozens and dozens of applications for money to invest in scams and MLMs.
A horse. He lived with his mom in a small apartment and had no income. He was 38, male. We didn't approve the loan and he was really mad. Also, the loan was for $1,500.
I once met with a landlord to look at a 2-bedroom apartment he had for lease. When I showed up, he was with a woman who was looking at leasing out the storefront on the ground floor of the building, because she wanted to start her own gourmet jelly bean business. She said she already had her loan from the bank and was looking to open immediately. After she left, then the landlord and I had a laugh about it and discussed how doomed her jelly bean store would be. This was in 2008.
$500 for diapers and other related items. My baby is born tomorrow and we haven't bought anything. Yeah, you had 9 months to plan this. Declined.
I financed and traded into 3 new cars back to back, ended up with a car loan 3 times the value of the final car. I know this because when I totaled the 3rd car, the bank let me know. Thanks goodness for gap insurance, because insurance had to eat the negative equity of $40K.
I work at a bank processing credit card applications, and the thing that gets me the most is that people don't seem to care about ruining their credit. I always advise people with a low score, less than 650 where I work, that it's not worth applying because it will negatively affect their score, and they always say let's try anyways. The most baffling thing about it is that these are almost always older customers, People well into their 40s and 50s with credit scores as low as 520 that I've seen. It is shocking to me that some adults have absolutely no idea about their own credit situation. People with zero savings, zero assets, items in collections, and a terrible credit score still apply for credit. I didn't realize how common this was until I started working at a bank.
I know that the 401k is the American version of the RRSP, but every time I see it written out in my head, I audibly say loudly, 401. Whisper, K. I've always wondered, when you repay your 401k loan, does the interest also get added to your balance?
Thank you for watching. We publish amazing Reddit stories every day. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe to keep the dog smiling.